Good evening, everyone. Good to have you with us wherever you're watching around the country or indeed the world. This is Apex Rear Wing's 8th season of racing. So, what are we racing? The category is DRM. What's DRM, you may ask? Well, it stands for Deutsche Rennsport Meisterschaft, which literally translates in German to German Racing Championship, and it is regarded as the predecessor to Germany's premier touring car series today, which is DTM. So, from 1972 to 1985, when the series folded, it was the country's premier touring and sports car series, so more on the cars themselves later on. My name's Stairs, bringing you all the action tonight, along with Matt Dunlop. Pleasure to have you along for the ride, Matt.
It is good to be with you as always, Stairs.
Absolutely. Going to have a quick look at the cars in a moment, but you've had a bit of a chance to drive them just in the practice session then. What did you think?
Well, I've had a bit of a chance to attempt to drive, is probably a better word to use here. It's been a while since I've given the DRM mod a spin, and I'm definitely used to driving the Caterhams, which are very easy to pick up. And I think I was in the fence, not necessarily in the fence, but off the track and backwards a number of times. Couldn't get a solid lap in the half hour that I was running on track, so this will be great fun to watch.
It absolutely will. It's a good point you make. The Caterhams that we raced last season and these DRM cars, I don't think you could find two different cars that are more diametrically opposed. Here are the drivers. Rhodey joining us for his second series. He's only done 2 races, and he's in the Ford Capri. That's one of the most popular cars on the grid there. Tyrrell also joins us with Jeff Vader Racing. He's done 12 races, and looking for more good results from him. PBF Send It joining us to this with Brenton Foley in the Ford Capri as well. So 3 Ford Capris so far. He's got the 1 win in his 20 races. Brno will be looking to add to his 1 win as well in his 21 races, teaming up with Sam Smith for Blechschuppen-Rennen, which is German for Tin Shed Racing. Resist is the sole BMW M1 driver, and that car will be a challenge. Very heavy boy, that car. 30 races for him, 2 top 5s, and he'll be aiming for podiums this season, I should expect. Pablo returns to the championship after a season off in the Ford Capri for Main Force Racing. He joins with his brother Bang, more on him later. Sam Smith, 55 races, 7 victories and 30 podiums. He's going to be fast in that Porsche 935 Turbo. It's got a lot of power behind it and not too heavy either. Bang there, as I mentioned earlier, in the second Main Force Racing Ford Capri, 79 races, 8 podiums and 17 top 5s. What can he do to extend that? Roadhog, and I've practiced this. Nivus Rajahadas Voimanapaus is how you pronounce his team name, which is Finnish, I'm told. Nikon Kankol Artek back with Madbird in the Ford Capri, 88 races, 7 podiums and 33 top 5s to his name. He'll be looking to extend his podium count as well. Dismaj in the 935T for Mr. Sparkle Racing with 3 wins and 6 podiums. And Nether with the Outworld Racing Team Porsche 935T, 97 races for his ARW career to this point, 2 wins for him as well. Goofball Antics, one of the most experienced drivers in this championship. Protonomaly Racing, one of 2 BMW 320s in this field, the other one being the defending champion Xeris. And that car's a bit down on power, so it'll be interesting to see how they manage to overcome that power deficit. Strategy may come into it. Here's a look at the calendar. We're of course starting tonight in Brno at the Masaryk circuit in the Czech Republic. On today being the 19th of June, one of two rounds in Europe. And after round 1 next week, we're heading across the pond to Detroit Belle Isle. Some of you who are IndyCar fans will probably be familiar with that circuit. A good circuit indeed. Then we fly south in virtual terms to Florida for Sebring International Raceway on the 3rd of July. That's round 3. And all the way across to the most isolated capital city in the world in Perth for Barbagallo Raceway round 4. And following that race, we're going back across to America to New York State for Watkins Glen International. This was a randomly decided championship order, by the way, in case you couldn't tell. And then we go up north into Canada for Circuit Gilles Villeneuve in Montreal on the 24th of July. That's round 6. Excuse me. And then round 7, Not really sure where this track is. I have been led to believe it's in Australia, but it's a fantasy track built by one of our very own Roadhog, Hollowham Raceway. And then following that, we go up to Portugal to the Algarve International Circuit in Portimao for round 8 on the 7th of August. Then we go down to South America for the first of 2 rounds to finish us off in South America. The first of those being in Rio de Janeiro at Yacarapagua. And then we fly north to Salvador for Circuito Ayrton Senna on the 21st of August to end the season in round 10. So let's have a bit of a look at practice now. We've still got about 5 minutes remaining until qualifying. And Matty, it's Brno at the top setting the timing sheets alight, along with his teammate Sam Smith.
Yeah, for those of you who are used to ARW seasons in recent history, particularly ARW Season 7 in which we raced Caterhams, you're more likely to remember the Xeris show, which is where Xeris dominated almost every single session available to him, bar a few really good scraps with Brenton Foley. But at the moment, Xeris is sitting 5th. We've got Brno, like you said, leading the charts at the moment with his teammate Sam Smith in 2nd. So those two Tinshed Racing or Blechstuppen Rennen cars, I'm not sure if I pronounced that anywhere slightly correctly, but those cars are looking pretty quick, as are the rest of the Porsche 935s. Exactly
right. The top car in the field that is not a Porsche 935 Turbo is the very leery Brenton Foley in the PBF Send It car, which is a Ford Capri. So it's a good opportunity to see what sort of lap differences we see in these cars. So Diesemage in the Porsche 935T. The other Porsches, let's see if we can find where they're sitting. We've got Nether in 8th place at the moment, and that's the only other Porsche 935T in this particular practice session. So Ford Capri's looking okay. They're a little bit down on power compared to the 935T. The 935 has 849 horsepower, and comparing that to the Ford Capri, 581, but it is about 150 kilos lighter.
Yeah, so in terms of power to weight ratio, the 935 does definitely lead the way with a ratio of 0.84 horsepower per kilogram, making it not only one of the most powerful cars, but also one of the most quick overall by that broad metric. The Capri ranks 3rd of the cars in the field today with a ratio of 0.68 with, like you said, 581 horsepower and 850 kilograms. But at a circuit like Brno, it's hard to tell what's going to be the most important. It is a bit of an all-round circuit. But there are not too many fast corners. All the corners are pretty slow, they all follow the same sort of radius. But there are some sections with like steep uphill climbs where horsepower and momentum through corners is particularly important stairs.
Absolutely. And we know that the Porsches are going to be very, very strong over one lap, but these races are longer than we've had in recent times in Apex Rear Wing, with the 2 sprint races in the previous season in the Caterhams that we had. Strategy is going to be an element in these DRM races. So how much fuel they use over the course of a stint, how they use their tyres, all of that is going to come into the fore, and we may well not know who's got the advantage until everyone has made their pit stop, or maybe has not made their pit stop. We believe from the numbers that we've been given that the BMW 320 in the hands of Xeris and Goofball Antics may be able to do this race without making a pit stop.
And that could open things up absolutely for sure. And Xeris, as you remember from last season, is one of the most smooth drivers on the grid. So if anyone can conserve his consumables, his tyres and his petrol for an entire race distance, it's got to be Xeris.
I have to agree with you there. And so far, 5th in the timesheets, 2.5 seconds adrift of the leader Berto at the moment. So that on paper looks like really rather a large margin, but I just feel like that we're not going to really know who's going to be the favourite in this championship until we're some 50 minutes into the race.
Keep an eye out for people who are new to the DRM cars, of course, because one thing that people who have driven these simulated vehicles will know is that turbo lag is an absolute monster, especially if you're coming out of a corner with a long build-up and you're trying to get on the power as quickly as you can. If that turbo lag kicks in when you're not expecting it, or you're not able to handle it properly, you're off into the fence, and that's the end of your race.
Exactly right. And the turbo lag is something I believe you were having a bit of difficulty with when you were trying to come to grips with these cars.
It definitely was. I was trying to drive these things around this track with an H-pattern shifter at first, blipping my downshifts with the clutch pedal as well. And that was a very steep learning curve, as you can imagine. So I shifted to the sequential paddles, and it made things a little bit easier, but that turbo lag is still something to be feared.
Certainly is. We've seen Brenton Foley taming the beast quite impressively throughout most of the Caterham series. He was one of the drivers we really looked forward to seeing in the top 10 shootouts because he got the back out. Well, a very, very different beast in these DRMs, and he's continuing to get the back out. Whether or not that's going to be the fastest way, I think he may well chew through a few sets of tyres in this championship. It still seems to be the way that he likes to drive, and as he slides his way onto the main straight, he's going to provide us with some entertainment, if nothing else.
Sam Smith as well will be doing the exact same thing. I've already seen him sliding around quite a bit this lap, and he was well renowned for getting the back end of those Caterhams out all over circuits, all over the ARW Season 7 calendar. A little bit more weight over the rear end of these Porsches, given that they are a rear-engine car, but he's still going to give it the best he can.
Yeah, Sam Smith, 7 victories to his name in Apex Rear Wing, and this may well be the best shot that he's had for a championship tilt in this Porsche. But he's got his teammate to contend with. They're both driving for the same team, and Sam Smith, I wonder if he'll regret bringing on board Berto in case if Berto starts to beat him over the course of the championship. They were pretty closely matched in a number of races against each other in the Caterhams, and of course they can be differentiated by the number 20 for Sam Smith and number 13 on Berto's car.
And if there's anyone you have to beat in these races, it is your teammate first and foremost, especially when they're in the exact same car, because if anyone is going to be the golden standard to prove yourself against, it's going to be them. Mind you, all the Porsche 935s are going to be pretty evenly matched in this series. It's just down to how the driver handles them.
Exactly right, and it may well be that it's something that's a bit easier to be handled by one driver and not necessarily the other driver. We've just moved into the qualifying session, and the qualifying shootout will be beginning very, very shortly. 30 minutes allowed for the shootout. Hopefully that's enough to get all of the 13 cars through. As Rhodey takes to the racetrack for Deutsche Rennsport.
I was watching Rhodey who was going around during the practice session. He was having a few teething issues with the car, so this may well be a very cautious lap, just to even get a little bit more track time in.
Yeah, certainly we saw he's the least experienced driver in this championship with only 2 races in Apex Rear Wing. Spent most of the previous season behind the microphone when you weren't able to make it here, Matty, as my co-commentator.
Did a very excellent job with that, but now that he's back behind the wheel, I'll be really keen to see how he goes. He has some experience in real-life racing, of course, having piloted Formula V a few years ago. Now he's back behind the wheel of one of these very powerful cars. Let's see how he can translate those skills.
And I would be remiss during this outlap if I didn't take the opportunity to explain to our audience what Deutsche Rennsport actually stands for, because that is an acronym, and the Blairwitch being short for Being Loud and Inspiring Race-Winning Incidents Through Chance Happenings Racing by PBF Academy. So a satellite team of Brenton Foley's PBF Racing team.
When I find myself behind the wheel, that's definitely a mantra I can get behind.
Very much so. So still making his way around this outlap. It's not a short track, normally used for MotoGP, and lots of, as you mentioned earlier, long, similarly radiused corners, and that's going to play havoc on the tyres over the course of this race.
Particularly without a huge amount of camber as well, so it's going to be hard to get these cars hooked in as they go around the corner. And one of the main things that these drivers will have to be wary of is Rhodey takes the turn onto horsepower hills, as referred to, out of turn 13 to charge back up towards the pit straight, is this corner, turn 14. It is very, very blind, so you have to get your braking point absolutely nailed, as he seems to be getting a little bit wobbly.
Oh dear.
Through turn 14. I think he's ruined his run up a little bit, but let's see how he goes through turn 15 as he starts his flying lap.
Very, very important corner. As this is the first lap of the qualifying session, let's jump on board with Rhodey. And can you hear me over the sound of that turbo engine? Very, very loud on the way down to turn 1. And look at the entry. You have to spot it from so far back. Lots of on and off the throttle going on here. You can hear the turbo starting to spool up as he comes out of 2, and this counts as corner 3, so you're already on the way up the hill towards turn 4. Left-hander, and not using all the track on the right-hand side there. Just trying to stay alive, and he's just gone a little bit wide of the ideal line. It's one of those rob Peter to pay Paul kind of corners, because you've got to set yourself up for turn 5. Short shoot down to turn 6 now, and you've got 2 right-handers coming up. Where do you hit the brakes? He's gone down to 100 meters before slamming on the anchors, turning in maybe a little bit too much curb, but that doesn't look too bad actually. Then you go out to turn 7. Right, get across to the right-hand side of the track. Doesn't use all of the track on the right-hand side. Just trying to get it to the apex out of turn 8, down to turn 9, under the bridge. Lots of changes of direction here. And you can see that his lock up from the previous lap where he made a bit of a blue. And then quite a sharp corner, this one. A lot sharper than the previous one. Turn 10, then down to turn 11. You've got another hairpin coming up. Feels like a lot of these corners are down into downhill braking zones. And very easy to feed yourself off into the gravel. Out of turn 11, down the hill, it flattens out just a little bit before you get to turn 12 and turn 13, the one you were talking about before as you come out of 13 up Horsepower Hill.
It's a very dramatic elevation change of this circuit, and it makes it really interesting, especially given how the car handles out of some of these bends, and it looks like Brody's taking it very cautiously this lap. You've got to drive these cars with just a little bit of oversteer, I feel, to get the most out of them, but it's a very delicate balance, and it looks like he's towing the safe line. Yeah,
there's been a few moments where I've been a little bit worried he's not going to make the corner, but not too shabby in the end. He's nailed himself down a lap, and anyone who doesn't do a lap without making a huge mistake is going to be starting behind him. So good job from him to get a time on the board.
Tyrrell comes out now to start his flying lap, also in a Ford Capri, this one being a green Mobil 1 sponsored vehicle, also sponsored by some of his, I assume, favourite alcohol companies. He looks to be under the influence of some of those. Gone right off the track at turn 1.
Oh, that's it. He's gonna be able to get out of the gravel. Very, very hard to get out of the gravel in some of these racetracks, but he's got enough torque to get out, and that is exactly what Rody would have wanted to see happen, is people making mistakes, and I don't think Tyrrell's going to be able to recover that time. It's just a matter of putting a time on the board, because if anyone else makes a worse hash of their lap, then they will be starting behind him. So an inauspicious start for Jeff Vader Racing with their driver number 42, Tyrrell.
He's missed a few of these apexes so far, so it's not looking to be a particularly fast lap, unfortunately. Hopefully he can get it back around in one piece.
Hopefully. I guess it's more of a sighter now for the race itself. And this may well be an interesting experience if people haven't done if people haven't done their qualifying practice in the practice session. He's very low in the rev range there, not utilizing any of the turbo. The cars are very, very they don't have much torque down there, so he's just playing it safe, it would appear, at the time being. But just to finish on my point, the cars behave quite differently on low fuel to high fuel, so I wonder if he's done his quali run in practice.
Potentially. I did hear a few drivers talking about that in the practice run, and it's going to be great to see how that pans out during the race when pit and fuel strategy becomes such a big part of it.
Absolutely right. I mean, you do pay obviously a weight. You pay a penalty in terms of your straight line speed when you take the weight out, but how they handle it is pretty much as important as how quick they are down the straight. So that's where the guys in the 935 turbos will have the advantage when you get up to places like Horsepower Hill, but they may well need to brake a lot earlier in the corners to make it through. Tyrrell's about 10 seconds adrift of the time we saw from Rody, so he's going to slot comfortably into second place, with Rody being the only other driver who's set a lap time. And
Pablo comes around now to start his flying lap in the third Capri we've seen in this qualifying session today, in what I have to say is my absolute favourite livery.
Bit of a Mad Max fan?
Oh, definitely a bit of a Mad Max fan. He's done this one very, very well.
It's quite faithful, actually. He's shown us pictures through the week of his reference images, and it's a shame we haven't got Bang in the server yet. He's got the Pursuit livery, and Pablo with the Interceptor livery, and very, very faithful to the original.
If anything, it absolutely stands out, and the simplicity of it really matches the sort of design you'd see on a 1980s car.
Certainly does. He's flown under the Colombian flag for a number of seasons as well, and I don't know whether it's pure luck, but the colours of the livery, of course, match the Colombian flag as well, using those three colours.
Well, I wonder if he's channeling Juan Pablo Montoya. He's currently going pretty well. He's up 7/10 at the moment, so he's looking on track to take provisional pole at this rate.
Yeah, it is looking good for Pablo. He's got quite a bit of experience in Apex rear wing, more so than the two who preceded him. So I think he would be certainly aiming for nothing less. But what can he do in terms of challenging those who are yet to come? Because those are going to be his main targets. And I guess that makes it quite difficult when you've got a target that's yet to set a time.
The beauty of this first race of the season, though, is you don't really know where you stand when it comes to the opposition. We did see toward the later stage of last season, you had certain defined battles, Xeris versus Brenton Foley, Madbird versus Decent Madge. At the moment, it's anyone's game. Who knows where they're going to end up as he comes across the second sector to set a second sector time, 1.4 seconds up, which is pretty dang good, if you ask me.
Yeah, that's very, very good. 57.4 was his middle sector time. And to compare that to those who came before him, Rhodey did a 58 flat. Tyrrell did a 58.6 in the middle sector. So he's well over a second clear in the middle sector. He comes across the line and finds another whole chunk of time in the final sector. So 201.7 is the time to beat from Pablo.
Roadhog comes across the line now to start his flying lap in what I think is the only Toyota Celica on the field this season, Stairs.
It absolutely is, and it has a very, very different sound to the other cars. So as we've had nothing but Capris so far, now we're getting a bit of a chance to hear the variety in engine noises.
It's an incredible sound behind this one, and it really likes to get the back end stepped out, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's another one. It's similar in weight and horsepower to the Capri. It's down about 10-15 horsepower on what the Capri has, and it's a little bit heavier, so probably not the best car in terms of power to weight ratio as coming in behind the Capri, but he's making good use of it because he's 5/10 up through the first sector on all of those who went before him. So I think Roadhog's in for a good season here. I reckon he's going to have an affinity with these cars, even though he's chosen a car that's on paper a little bit slower.
I think so, especially when it comes to Hollowham Raceway, which is, of course, the circuit that he designed. And I reckon he is due to go very well around that track.
Just love the body kit on this car. It just looks like a wedge, doesn't it?
It does. It looks like it does not belong on this vehicle at all, but I'm certainly glad it's there. And the turbo flutter when you're listening on board is quite incredible too.
Yeah, we'll have to keep an eye out for that during the races. Bit of flame out of the exhaust as he downshifts for the following corner. And just dancing on the limit of grip ever so nicely.
Very tidy lap so far. Haven't seen any splits come up yet so far, maybe because I'm not paying attention to the splits as they're going on.
1.1.
Looks like he's going pretty well though. There we go, 1.1 so far, and that's pretty bloody quick.
Yeah, that is very quick. Pablo absolutely trounced those ahead of him, and looks like Roadhog's well on the way to trouncing Pablo's time. So very, very good signs from him as he comes around the final corner. A little bit of a wiggle there. That's what we like to see. Roadhog's close to the limit and down to the line. 1.4 seconds up, so he finds another 3/10 in the final sector to set a 2-minute .2.
Great lap. So we're bound to see quite a few people get under the 2-minute margin though. That's a great camera angle leading onto the start-finish straight from turn 15 as you get to see the back end really step out. But now Resist is going around. He's just exiting turn 2 and going to the turn 3 kink now in the only BMW M1 Pro car on the field.
With the Slav livery on it, and that M1 is, I got to say, it's probably from a looks point of view one of my favourite cars in this championship. It just looks fast. It's probably not the fastest in overall terms. It's a very, very heavy car, the heaviest car in the field at 1,065 kilograms, but they have put a fair few horses in the back of it. 791 horsepower, I believe, in that M1, which is second only to the 935. Of course, the 935 is a little bit lighter than the M1.
The 791 horsepower coming from, I think it's a V12 engine. You'll have to correct me on that one if I'm wrong, but BMW is definitely renowned for making bulletproof engines back in the day.
So let's see Have we got any sector times yet for Resist? He is up through the first sector. A 38.6 was what he set. Very, very close to that set by Roadhog. Only about half a tenth in it. So we'll see what the middle sector can do in terms of differentiating them, and a bit of a lock-up of the inside front right tyre, sliding the car around. That looks absolutely beautiful. We know that Roadhog was on the limit. We can see that Resist is on the limit, but he's locking it up everywhere. He's going to have flat spots on those fronts. 4 tenths up.
He's 4 tenths up at the moment, but he just scrubbed off quite a bit of time into that S-bend going onto Horsepower Hill. So hopefully he can take some momentum up the hill with him, but he does have a bit of weight to lug up there, so he might slow down quite a bit in this last sector.
Yeah, very, very crucial to get a good exit up towards the Horsepower bend. So how much time did he lose, or has his engine pulled him out of it? We're going to find out as he comes across the line. 7 tenths up on what Roadhog managed. Resist goes to the top.
Great time for Resist. He's currently provisional first. Nether will now cross the line to start his lap in the first of the Porsche 935s.
Yeah, you can hear those horizontally opposed pistons as he goes through turns 1, 2, and down towards turn 3. And a lot of mid-corner speed carried through there by Nether.
The Porsche 935 is what many would consider, especially in European racing circles, one of the most prolific racing cars of all time.
Well, Porsche was certainly very dominant in the real-life DRM championship. It was Ford dominating in the early years, but Porsche certainly took over as the championship entered its latter years.
A little bit wide through turn 5 as he runs down to turn 6, but he's up 5 tenths, so
wow.
I'd say he hasn't harmed him too much.
Yeah, that's good. That's very, very good. Bit of a slide, though. Oh, he's managed to gather that one up very nicely indeed. So hopefully, from his point of view, he won't have lost too much time with that little slide. Thankfully, it's a downhill bit next. And, of course, he's got all those horses in the back of that Porsche to get him out of trouble.
It's a surprisingly tricky section, this stadium section that he's now exiting. Even though the corners are very low speed and there's not a huge amount of danger too if you fly off the track because of the low speeds, it's very slippery out there.
Certainly is. So now that goes down towards the downhill braking zone, throws the anchors on, turns it in, looks a bit more stable through here than it did on some of the previous corners. I wonder if he's got his delta up in his screen. He can see he's up and he's just trying to protect that advantage that he has and nail down a good lap. He's had a few qualifying mishaps in previous races. Nice clean exit up towards Horsepower Hill. He's 3.5 tenths up, so he's lost time through the middle sector to Resist.
I'd say he's going to make that time back up again going up Horsepower Hill with those 849 horsepowers behind him, but that's very wide as he goes through turn 14. Gathers it back up for turn 15, but that's going to lose him quite a bit of time. Let's see how he goes. He hits the last ribble strip and comes across the line. Oh. He is first by a margin of 1/10 of a second. You can't get much closer than that, can you?
Yeah, he threw a lot of time away at the penultimate corner there, so he was lucky to get away with that and still be in provisional pole. I think he'll be a little bit annoyed with that last lap, because apart from that, it was a very good lap.
Now we go to Goofball Antics driving the first of the BMW 320s, and we take that 849 horsepower that the Porsche 935 had and just subtract 400. So we've got a car with 549 horsepower, which sounds like a lot, but relative to the rest of the championship, it's quite a small amount. But this car does weigh 880 kilograms. So it is, but it does have the worst power to weight ratio of any car in the grid. But like you said earlier, pit strategy could be this car's in this car's favour.
Very much so. It's only about 20 kilos heavier than the Celica, but of course it's just struggling in the horsepower department. So we'll see what it can manage. Has he set the exact same time?
I think it's the exact same time. His first sector is completely on par with Nether's to the margin of 0.000. So, man, wasn't expecting that.
I had to blink to see if I was seeing things correctly, if there was just zeros burnt into my retinas, but that's correct. Goofball Antics has done the identical first sector time to Nether, so this is mighty, mighty close.
And this is not something I thought I'd ever see with these cars and how unevenly matched they are, but I guess a track like this, Brno, with all the elevation change and the tricky corners, is a real equaliser.
Well, a bit of a lock-up downhill, the inside front, and sliding the car. They still have a fair bit of power. To say that they're underpowered would be wrong. It's just in relative terms they don't quite have the power of the other ones, but he's driving it very well. He's lost 5 tenths though through there. He's going to lose more time as he comes up Horsepower Hill because the little 320 is going to struggle to make it up there with any great pace.
Absolutely, that's a big drop off on time, so I'd expect to see Goofball floating around the back of the field at the start of the race especially.
Remember, never had a mistake there, though.
But once it gets into the mid-stage of the race, you can expect him to catch up with pit strategy.
Oh!
He crossed the line, he's in first! How did that happen?
Well, that's because that's where Nether made that mistake at the penultimate corner, and Goofball Antics was looking like he was going to be behind Nether, but that last corner was very, very costly for the Porsche driver, so Goofball Antics goes to provisional pole. Remember, he was a very good qualifier in the previous championship in the Caterhams, and
He certainly was.
yeah, he's proving the same here.
He got quite a few surprise pole positions in that series, and he looks to have continued that streak, at least provisionally. But now Madbird's out in another one of the Ford Capris, and he's looking pretty racy, if I do say so myself.
Yeah, he's been pretty hyped for these DRMs, and you can see the waifu livery that he's using in that Ford Capri. Not to be confused, of course, with the Brenton Foley Ford Capri, which is using a similar color scheme. You can tell the difference with the teal accents and, of course, the anime characters on the side of the Cancol R-Tech Ford Capri driven by Madbird.
He's down a tenth and a bit at the first sector, but given the mistakes that people have been making throughout the rest of these laps, you can expect that to fluctuate up or down in any direction by any amount.
Exactly right. Let's see what Madbird can do in the middle sector. That might be where he can claw back a little bit of an advantage on Goofball Antics, especially coming up Horsepower Hill. Of course, the Ford Capri, not the most powerful car on the grid, so it won't be able to claw back as much as if he was driving a Porsche 935T or a BMW M1, but this has been a clean lap from everything that I've seen from Madbird so far. He's not pushing it too much. Maybe that will be telling as he comes to the second sector split. Maybe he needs to push a little bit more, but I eat my words because he's 8/10 up. That is really remarkable.
It is not one of the strongest cars on the grid in terms of horsepower, but you have to keep in mind it is the lightest car on the grid with a weight of 850 kilograms, with nobody racing the Lancia, which weighs in at 770. So this thing can get itself around corners very efficiently.
Well, I fully expect Madbird to come across the line and take provisional pole position away from Goofball Antics, and he does so by 0.6 of a second. Lost time to Goof in the final sector. That was a remarkable final sector from Goofball Antics, but Madbird is good enough to go to the top of the timesheets.
Now, Xeris is out with another one of the BMW 320s, and this could be one of the surprise results of the qualifying session. As we know, Xeris dominated the last series of the ARW series in the Caterhams, but this is very different to a Caterham, isn't it, Stairs?
Very, very different indeed. The only thing similar to his Caterham that he won the previous championship with is the colour scheme. Apart from that, it's a very, very different car indeed. He's going to do his best, though, to try and wring the neck of that BMW 320 and get it onto pole position. Look at that, 0.3 up in the first sector. That car has no power, and he's dragging it around this racetrack.
It's incredible stuff. He is dragging it for sure, but he's dragging it very neatly and tidily. There's not been very many brake lock-ups, slides, or anything like that from Xeris, renowned for being a precise driver. So that will definitely pay into his hands here.
Yeah, he can brake later than you would ever think was possible into a corner and not lock up and make it look effortless. And he's doing that here. I haven't seen any lock-ups from him so far. So ZNB Racing, if he manages to hold on to some sort of advantage through the middle sector, I would expect that he's got the goods to go towards pole position. But of course, we've still got the matter of Horsepower Hill to come.
We certainly do. It was truly a joy to watch Xeris racing in the last series with his style, which contrasted so differently from people like Brenton Foley and Sam Smith, who were very oversteer heavy. He's up 0.4 of a second, so he's going quite well at the moment. A little bit of a slide, but that's just relatively speaking to the rest of his lap, where he's been absolutely spot on. And given the differences in these cars and how they handle, it's going to be absolutely sensational to watch him going toe-to-toe with some of these other vehicles.
Well, if they can manage to not make a pit stop in these cars, that will be a very big advantage for Xeris in this first race of the championship. Coming to the line, and he takes provisional pole with a 58.2, half a second up on Madbird.
Brenton Foley now crosses the line to start his lap in another Ford Capri. It is a very popular car, as you were saying earlier, for Stairs Noises Racing.
Yes, I'd be remiss if I didn't say that the full name of his team is PBF Stairs Excited Noises DRM International Team, which, when abbreviated, spells PBF Send It, which I think is what he'll be doing in the races if he gets half a chance.
He's already been sending it so far. This like little bit wobbly coming out of turn 2, which hopefully hasn't dented his lap time too much. But knowing, oh, that's a big slide through turn 5. Oh my goodness, this guy's going to be sensational to watch. He's just up by 600ths of a second. That's a big lock-up though into turn 6.
Well, we saw a bit of a rivalry developing between Brenton Foley and Xeris in the previous championship. Oh, he's going to hold on to it. That was very close to being absolutely over and out. How did he hold on to that? We've been seeing this in the practice sessions during the course of the evening, and also in the test sessions. He's been absolutely hanging the tail out in this car. Tyres aren't going to like it though.
No, the Brenton Foley Capri is going to eat tyres like a fat kid eats cake.
Fantastic. So Brenton Foley, can he hang on to this incredible lap? Will he still be up as he comes through I distract myself by looking at him slide as he goes through turn 12 and 13. He's still up. The margin has been a little bit evaporated. Slides it out of there. I wonder if he got enough traction down to keep the momentum as he goes up the hill. He's a 10th up.
He's almost taking the mickey at this point. It's unbelievable. He's getting the back end at every corner. He's tipped that one in. He's slammed the brakes and tipped that one in. I don't believe it. If he gets provisional pole position, I'll be very impressed. But it looks like he's on track to.
I reckon he's going to have it. I can't see where he's lost the time. He's gained time. Another 10th in the final sector, and Brenton Foley takes provisional pole on a 1:58 flat.
Unbelievable. Keep your eyes out for Foley during the races because he is going to be a sensational bit of television viewing. Decent Madge now starts his lap in another of the Porsche 935s.
Mr. Sparkle Industries Racing, and that livery designed by Roadhog, so good job from Roadhog to slap together a livery fairly quickly. D-Smash was one of the last of these drivers to actually select which car he was going to drive. He ended up going for the 935 Turbo because it's fast.
That's as good a reason as any. It's a nice and simplistic livery as well. As I did say before, I do like a nice simplistic livery, especially because I can tell what it looks like from a distance and I have no idea picking out who it is. He is down in the first sector though by a margin of 1/10 and a bit.
Well, it's a tough act to follow, isn't it, when you've just seen that lap from Brenton Foley, which in terms of theatrics I don't think could be matched. And D-Smash very, very binary on the throttle. You can hear the thing making its way through. He's just trying to keep the turbo spool, I think. Just stabbing at the throttle, keeping his corner speed up and hoping to get a little bit of drive out of the corner.
It almost sounds like he's accelerating with the button. I'd assume he's not, but that's how his driving style seems to be. And whether or not it works for him, we'll find out.
He does like to soar at the wheel. Any of our viewers who've watched our Dirt Rally live stages will see how aggressive he is with the steering wheel. So I wonder if his pedal inputs are likewise. He drives actually with a CSL Elite Fanatec wheel. So far from being a keyboard operator, he has the goods. He has the material, the equipment to drive very smoothly, but he chooses not to.
Far from it, indeed. He's down 2/10 at the moment. And I did hear a few of the drivers mention that they are racing with H-pattern shifters this season. Not too many, though, because it's pretty hairy. So a lot of them are electing to stick with the paddle shifters, which I think is a safe bet.
Yeah, not necessarily realistic, but it is safer. He's going to be close with Xeris here. He was 2/10 down through the middle sector. And, oh my goodness, he takes pole position with an absolutely stellar final sector.
He's found that time from absolutely nowhere. He's up by 300ths of a second and then some. Sam Smith now. Keep your eyes on this, Blake. If anyone's going to get a Porsche out backwards, no, sorry, not backwards, but he's going to get the back end of this Porsche out where it doesn't belong, this bloke's going to do it, and he's going to do it quickly.
Looking very good for a Black Schuppenrennen 1-2 here with the two pink pigs starting this top 10 shootout last and second last, so that means that they were fastest and second fastest in the practice session, so looks pretty good for these two Rosa Schweins.
I want to say it's a beautiful livery on these cars. Objectively speaking, whether objective or subjective, I never remember which word is which, it is ugly as sin, of course, but it is timeless, isn't it? It's a timeless Porsche Le Mans livery, and you can't forget it from the annals of motorsport history. He looks to have cut that corner a little bit. Oh, that's hairy. He was up in the first sector, though, quite a lot, but he's not done well for the stadium section as a result of that effort through turn 7. He's shortcutted the run down to turn 8, and that's cost him a little bit dearly, so I'd say he's going to lose a bit of time in the second sector.
Yeah, 0.3 of a second is a lot of time to lose, though, and Sam Smith is attacking this lap because he knows Berto's got the goods to go even faster, so Sam Smith wants pole position here, and he's attacking it with with every ounce of his being. Yeah, just back on your point on the livery, it is ugly, but it's just one of those liveries that we really. It's a nostalgia thing, isn't it? We like these liveries because they remind us of a simpler time in racing.
Exactly right, and I think Porsche themselves felt the same thing where they entered the car last year in the 2018 Le Mans 24 Hour with the same livery. Sam Smith is now up 0.4 of a second, so everything I said about him losing time has gone right out the window, hasn't it?
Yeah, fastest middle sector of this qualifying session to go with fastest first sector, and very, very, very aggressive on those curbs, cutting the grass on the inside a lot. He comes to the line. This is going to be pole position. Wow. Just. I really shouldn't have been as confident as I was in calling that. D-Samaj had an absolutely fantastic final sector of his lap, didn't he? Because that's where he gained the time on Foley, looking like he was going to be behind Xeris at one point. And Sam Smith only just remains ahead of him. He lost a lot of time to James in that final sector.
Stairs, I gotta say, your attempts of calling the margins between these drivers as they come across the line in the final sector reminisces me of Murray Walker commentating Nigel Mansell saying, oh, he's slowing down, taking it easy, and then he sets a lap record. But now Brno goes out in the final of the Pink Porsches, and he's going to be absolutely rapid, I feel.
Well, is 13 lucky for Berto? He certainly seems to think so. And the Pig Schnell on the side of the rear wing there on the end plate, that certainly seems to explain what he's doing, because he's up by a similar margin on what Sam Smith had. So Sam Smith was nearly 3/4 tenths up on his lap. Berto's 3/4 tenths up on Sam Smith.
It just gets faster and faster and faster, doesn't it?
It certainly does. Berto, well, he's only got one win to his name in his 21 Apex rear wing races, and that came in last May when he teamed up with Sam Smith for the 6 hours of Spa in the Toyota 86 series. So he's angling right now for his first individual victory in Apex rear wing, and he's well on his way towards pole position.
And I'd say with this pace, he'd be on track for victory today and for many races this season to come.
A good battle is what we want to see. So certainly hope that the others can take it to him, but if Berto becomes another race winner, who are we to take that from him? Look at that, nearly 9/10 of a second up on Sam Smith. Berto is giving it the beans, and it doesn't look like a particularly risky lap, does it?
That's an absolutely astonishing margin. He's locked the brake quite a bit leading into turn 14 there, but it's not going to cost him very much, is it? I'm fully expecting he's going to cross the line by a margin of around the same.
Yeah, he may have lost a couple of tenths, but no, he's gained a few tenths, so I shouldn't even bother trying to predict the margins. As you said, Murray Walker at 56.8, that's pole position. Berto is going to start in pole position with Sam Smith behind him in a Blechschuppen Rennen front row lockout.
What an unexpected qualifying session. I don't think I saw any of those results coming. Like, sure, I did expect both of those Pink Pig Porsches to be on the front row, but man, a lot of those cars were not where I expected them to be.
Not at all. Not at all. So Berto's going to start in front of Sam Smith. D-Samaj in third. That was, I guess, that's what we should have expected given what we saw in practice. Brenton Foley up in fourth. He's wrestled that Ford Capri, the leading Ford Capri. Xeris in fifth place. So let's see what he can do, the leading 320. Madbird in sixth. Behind him, Goofball Antics. Nether in eighth place. Resist, the one and only M1. And then behind him, Roadhog in 10th. The one and only Salika. Pablo, Rody, and Tyrrell rounds out the grid of 13.
Just heading out now for a customary 10-minute practice session before the race gets underway.
Well, that gives us a bit of a chance to have a break, so we'll go away for a few minutes. We'll come right back and we'll talk predictions, so don't go anywhere. Welcome back to the Brno circuit, and the cars are just on their warm-up at the moment. Warm-up session, I should say, not warm-up lap, doing some practice starts. Hear that loud noise? That's all of the DRM turbo spooling up as they go down to turn 1. And we just had, I'd say, a surprising qualifying session. What was the most surprising part of it for you, Matt?
I couldn't pick one particular one, especially given that my internet's just died and I can't see the timing screen, so I couldn't tell you off the top of my head who's sitting where. But just the differences in margins between the sectors was unbelievable. I guess that was down to quite a few drivers in the early stages making mistakes, but once it got to the second half of qualifying, everyone was putting in some pretty flawless laps. And just the state at which those lap times were falling was unbelievable, wasn't it?
Yeah, there were big chunks taken out of the incumbent pole sitters at the time. And we saw some very, very surprising things. We thought that Sam Smith was going to absolutely destroy the lap time set by Diesemaj, but Diesemaj did a very, very quick final sector, and it was only about 100th of a second separating them in the end. But then Sam's teammate Brno comes out and absolutely blitzes the field. So I guess he's been keeping some time in reserve during the test.
Looks like he has been, and looks like he's been giving these cars a bit of a practice steer on his own time as well, because that was an absolutely rapid lap. I think the margin was a smidge over 1 second, wasn't it?
It was. It was 8 tenths up to the middle sector, and then coming across the line, he took another 2 or 3 tenths away from the time set by his teammate Sam.
A la Senna at Monaco in 1988.
Well, we know what happened in Monaco in 1988, though, don't we? There's 2 ways to win a race. You can go hell for leather and try and beat someone by the largest margin, or you could just plug away at it consistently, doing the laps and try and force a mistake from the other driver. And I wonder if that will be the strategy employed by Sam Smith.
And the motto I've heard before, I'm not sure which driver said it, I think it may have been Jack Brabham or somebody like that, was to win as slowly as possible. And in these cars where if you get a foot wrong, you're backwards and in the wall, winning as slowly as possible is probably a virtue.
Absolutely is, as they line up on the grid for another practice start. Unfortunately, the cameras on this Brno circuit don't offer us the best vantage point of the start, as it looks directly behind them. But thankfully, once they do get rolling, we do cut to an angle a little bit more akin to what we would expect to see at the start of a race, facing down from the first corner. But as this camera angle looks back towards the start-finish straight from turn 15, it gives you a unique perspective. And by Jove, once those engines spool up, or those turbos spool up, they certainly drown out any other sounds, don't they?
Absolutely. The first practice start that they made as we were getting back onto the air was a little bit hairy. I saw a few guys having a bit of a tank slap on the run down at turn 1, and 3 guys even tangled into the kitty litter on the entry to turn 1. Hopefully we don't have any issues like that. I think I just saw Resist, is it, in the BMW, who stalled it on the line. But I didn't get a chance to really launch one of these cars when I was practicing, so I'm not sure what they're like to launch, but it looks like the more practice starts these guys do, they've got another 3 minutes and 40 seconds or so to do so. I'd say they get used to it pretty quickly.
I'd say it's like wading through 3 foot of Vaseline to get these things off the line. Absolutely no torque in the bottom end, so they're going to be fairly uneventful, these starts, once until they actually get to some sort of pressure into the turbos. They really are meant for rolling starts, but the guys decided to vote, and they decided on standing starts, as has always been traditional in Apex Rear Wing. So even in GT3 days, we did standing starts, so that's what has continued to be the case. The M1 was actually one where Resist reported no issues with the car on the start, but I suppose if that issue was going to rear its ugly head, it would happen just prior to the start of the race. It was actually the reason why Roadhog switched to the Celica from the M1, because he thought that it was no good on the start.
Well, you don't really win a race off the start, but you certainly can lose one, so it is very important to have a car that can handle that at the same pace as all the others, because if you are really sluggish off the start and you get rear-ended, that's not going to be good news at all, is it?
Not at all. It's also going to be an issue in pit stops. If your car can get off the line fairly easily, then that will be an advantage for you in the pit stop. something that the guys will need to have practiced a lot as well, because these cars do not have pit lane speed limiters. And the pit lane speed limit, of course, will be in effect. So if they speed in the pit lane, there will be penalties to pay.
Absolutely. They'll be keeping one eye on the pit lane up ahead and one eye on the speedo down the bottom to make sure they don't get an automated penalty sent their way, which is never a good thing. I do believe it's a drive-through if they violated pit lane speed penalty. Do correct me if I'm wrong, though. Correct
indeed. Drive-through penalty for speeding in the pit lane. And that is a fairly hefty penalty anyway. Stop-go would just be day done, I should think.
You would say so, and I didn't get a chance to really check out the delta time for passing through the pit lane on this track, but given the average of every other track, I'd say it's about 20 seconds.
And that is going to be quite crucial, because we talked earlier about the potential for strategy to decide these races, and effectively, the less power the cars have, the more likely they are to be able to make it on no stops or one very short pit stop, like a splash and dash for fuel, because the cars that have the most horsepower, as you would think, use a lot more petrol.
You would definitely think, but we have to wait and see how it's going to pan out, of course, because weight does come into it a little bit, because with less weight to carry around, you can use those horsepowers more efficiently. But by and large, I would say the more powerful cars are going to be the biggest gas guzzlers. So you can definitely expect the people running the BMW 320s to really be getting a good improvement or a good benefit off those pit stops and the abilities to run longer without having to stop.
And Resist on a fairly entertaining lap as we look at him at the moment. 30 seconds remaining in this warm-up session. And as he came out of turn 12, turn 13, car was all sorts of sideways, and it was very enjoyable to watch.
One of my favourite parts about these practice sessions is just watching the guys go hammer and tongs at it. And now that the session's coming to a close, you can expect a lot of guys to just drive into a corner and just keep on driving.
That's it. They tend to not mind doing that at all. We just saw Pablo coming into the pit lane doing a practice pit entry. Not a bad idea. I don't know if any of the other drivers did that during this session, but I would applaud Pablo on doing that, because it may well prove the difference between 1, 2, 3, even 4 positions.
That's a pretty good call, and it's probably an oversight for a lot of these guys who are used to running just sprint races with no stops in the caterhams. But just back on the topic of going off the track, the sand traps here are very, very thick, and it's quite difficult to get out of one. So if you find yourself in a sand trap, you're going to lose a hell of a lot of time.
Yeah, you might need a safety car to recover you from that, which incidentally has been enabled again for this championship. We didn't see safety cars in the Caterham Championship in Season 7, even though it was supposedly switched on, but the sensitivity was too low for it to be brought out. So that's been tweaked a little bit. We hope that it's been tweaked enough that we might see the safety car in the odd race, but we don't want it to be an absolute certainty. That could certainly spice things up if that becomes a factor.
Not sure how temperature sensitive the parts of these cars are, and especially in regards to the brakes and the tyres, but it'll be interesting to see if that has a bit of an impact, not only off the start of the race, but also after a safety car period when everything cools down and you have to get all your consumables back up to temperature.
Absolutely. So, can hear the horns going on some of these cars. Good opportunity as we see the pink pigs lined up in first and second there to just see the difference between the two of them, with some lighter pink, almost orange accents on the front splitter of the number 13 driven by Berto that isn't present on Sam Smith's Porsche 935 Turbo.
Sam Smith also has a little bit of a race tape covering the left headlight there, which is also a very easy way to help pick him out in the crowd, but the number 20 for Sam Smith and number 13 for Berto is the way to go.
That's it. Well, they're warming up now, going through on their formation lap. So, Matt, do you want to take us through the grid for us?
We've got Berto, who currently leads, he doesn't currently lead. He's starting from pole position after a staggering lap time in which he bested Sam Smith out of second by 1 whole second. D-Samaj currently starts third. Forgive me if I get some of these wrong. I'm still having issues with my timing, unfortunately, so I cannot see the order. I'm just going off the way they line up on the track. It is Brenton Foley in fourth position ahead of Xeris, who did a staggering job in fifth with that BMW 320 ahead of ahead of Goofball Antics, I believe.
No, it is Madbird, you're right.
It is Madbird.
Goofball Antics is out of position on the racetrack.
My apologies. So Goofball Antics starts from 7. Madbird will start from 6th in the first of the Ford Capris. Goofball is 7th in the second BMW 320 with Nether, the last of the Porsche 935s in 8th position, ahead of Resist in the BMW M1, Roadhog in the Soul Toyota Celica, Pablo in the Interceptor-styled Ford Capri, Rody making his debut in the, I want to say he's making his debut, but all these guys are making their debut in the DRMs, but he's making his debut, he's not even making his debut, I'm going to leave that thought where it is. Tyrrell starts from 13th position after making a mistake in qualifying, which saw him in the gravel trap losing a lot of time, as I mentioned earlier, but I can expect to see him fighting back through the pack pretty rapidly, Stairs.
And that is the grid as they qualified. No one out of position from where they qualified because everyone set a lap time, which actually surprised me with these shootouts. Often someone shortcuts the track or makes some sort of mistake and crashes, exits out to the pits and doesn't record a time, but that wasn't the case tonight.
I'd say Tyrrell was keen to get back out on the track and get a little bit more track time in, just get used to the car, and especially maybe he's looking to see how it handles with a little bit of gunk on the tyres.
Yeah, that may well be a very important information. Learning how the cars handle with a little bit less power. Another opportunity now to see the difference between Brno and Sam Smith because they are the two most similar cars in this race. You've got the yellow on the back of of Berto's and the red on the back of Sam's Black Schuppen and Rennen cars as they line up on the grid, and actually camera angle changes to a more favourable one for us, which it didn't in the practices that I was doing during the week. So that's good. We'll get a fantastic view of the start in very short order as the cars line up on the grid.
All the drivers just spending a little bit of time getting some last-minute temperature into their rear tyres by help of the right-hand pedal, burning a little bit more fuel as well in the process and trying not to spear off into the weeds or onto the fence on the right-hand side. But Tyrrell now sits in his grid position and they're all gridded up, getting ready to go.
You saw Nether had to reverse to get back into his grid, but everyone's lined up now. The lights are on. We're about to get racing in Season 8 for Apex Rear Wing. Oh, and look at that. Foley went nowhere. And look at that. Madbird, I think that was crashing into the side of Xeris and crashing him off at the first opportunity. We're going to have to catch a replay of that as they go through. It's Brno leading the way. Has Xeris been able to recover? He's way back down there in 13th, the champion. Oh, my goodness gracious me. Let's catch the replay there. Yeah, it was unfortunate for Madbird there. The car in front of him went absolutely nowhere, and Xeris got absolutely punted sideways. That'll be looked at post-race.
That might be one of the quickest crashes I've ever seen. Not even 20 metres were made up by those cars, and Xeris is already in the fence, which is very unfortunate to see, but expect to see him charge back. Maybe at the expense of fuel economy and tyre economy, but it's going to be a great show, so always keep your eyes on Xeris there.
So Brno leads the way. Sam Smith under a bit of pressure from Brenton Foley, who, after nearly stalling it on the grid, has made positions up off the start somehow. Resist in 4th place, up 5 spots from where he started. He was the master of those fantastic starts in the testing prior to this championship getting underway. Nether also with a great start, up 3 spots from where he started. Decimage, one of the big losers, down 3 from where he started. Roadhog, another beneficiary of that mayhem on the start. Madbird down 2 spots. He'll be eager to recover spots, but does he have a cloud hanging over him from a penalty point of view if he's the one who crashed into Madbird, into Xeris, I should say. But I mean, where else was he supposed to go? The car in front of him went nowhere, and it was a very tightly packed grid. So we'll see what happens. Does he have damage as well? Pablo up 2 spots, Tyrrell up 3. Goofball, another big loser out of that incident.
But the biggest loser by far is Xeris. He's already made it past Rody, who was down 1 spot as a result of Tyrrell getting past. No, Tyrrell's around. He's made some contact with the fence and he's lost his front left quarter panel. What has happened there? Yeah,
just catching a replay of that now. Could just hear that happening in the background. He was up behind Pablo fighting for that position and lost the rear in the first part of that chicane, and a bit of damage to the front left. Quarter panel's just absolutely disappeared, and Tyrrell now at the back of the grid.
What a shame. I was about to make a comment about these guys all getting nice and tidy now, just keeping things together as the race gets underway, but unfortunately Tyrrell's found his way into the barrier. Hopefully we don't see too much more of that, but it is still Brno who leads the way, and he's already pulled a margin of 3.3 seconds over his teammate Sam Smith.
Madbird's just made a move up ahead of Roadhog for 6th place, so he's eager to recover positions that he lost off the start, try and undo the damage. I'm sure there'll be words with Xeris after the race, but I don't know what could have been done about it. We'll have to analyse that further on. Now Brenton Foley has made a move up ahead of Sam Smith and nearly takes Sam Smith out as he nearly spins. So Sam Smith has got a very racy Brenton Foley to deal with, and that is an absolute free kick to Brno, who's out to a 3-second advantage already.
That car of Sam Smith's does not look to be handling the way he likes it to. Or he's almost had a look there heading out of the stadium section, but in the stages where Brenton Foley was right behind, piling masses of pressure on as he normally does, it looked to have got Sam Smith unstuck, but he's back up the inside of now to turn 11. So it looks like Sam Smith definitely prefers chasing to leading here.
Yeah, well, Foley looks like he's driving a forklift the way that thing is sliding around at the rear, but he's now going to have the benefit of the outside line there. Sam Smith goes very, very deep into turn 12. They go side by side up the hill. This will be a horsepower, I was going to say a horsepower advantage to the Porsche, but Foley had enough of momentum to get clear of Sam Smith as they went down to turn 14.
I'd say Sam made a little bit of
He's
an
in the
error there,
booties!
but Foley's made an error. Foley's in the gravel.
He absolutely is. What happened there? Just lost the rear and there was no recovering. He loses two spots there to Resist and Decimage, and now has Madbird behind him. Two very similarly coloured cars but very different liveries. Madbird goes through up into 5th place.
Unbelievable. You don't never expect Brenton Foley to make a mistake, but with the driving style he has, in which the style is hanging out as much as it can, you almost think it's bound to happen, don't you?
You absolutely do. So he's now down 2 spots from where he started and eager to put Madbird under some pressure now that he's regathered his thoughts.
Meanwhile, in the battle for third, it looks like Resist is barely holding off Decimage. He's clawing his way back up into the 3rd position that he started from, and he's about to make a pass into turn 6, and I think he's about to do so. They're side by side on the run down there. No, it is Resist who holds on in the BMW M1. Very
early days, of course. Just 5 minutes have elapsed in this race, but Resist is in a very, very good position. His best result in an ARW race is 5th place. He wants podiums. I've called him as the next podium sitter in Apex Rear Wing for a number of rounds now. I certainly think that he's got the potential to get a podium in this championship, even if the car isn't necessarily most suited to a podium, being a very, very heavy beast.
Looks like Decimage is going to have a lunge, and he does so. It looks like Resist is locked up a little bit on the run to turn 11.
Whoa.
Resist was driving as defensively as he possibly could. It's a wide-looking car, that BMW N1, and Resist was trying to make it as wide as he possibly could, but it wasn't enough. Decimage is now back where he started, but there's a lunge.
Yeah, well, I think Decimage was a little bit wide out of turn 12, and that gave Resist a bit of an opportunity. He's a bit clear now, and the horsepower advantage of that Porsche making itself evident up the hill as Brno sets the fastest lap of the race. So that Porsche looks like it's as tall as a bus in comparison to that M1, but we know it's a low-slung sports car.
Absolutely. It's strange seeing a car like that, and you think how big and bulky it looks, but these cars are very, very small in comparison, and that BMW M1 sitting behind is just an incredibly short car. Behind those two, though, we've got Madbird in 5th and 6th. They're probably one of the closest... Sorry, Madbird in 5th and Brenton Foley in 6th. They're one of the closest battles at the moment, as we have Goofball Antics, I think, was running off the track at turn 2 there, unfortunately for him.
Just catching a replay of that now, and it was Xeris behind him. He's going to come under some pressure from Xeris fairly shortly in the other BMW 320, I should expect. Just took way too much speed into that first corner and went into the gravel. Didn't lose too much time considering how far he was off the circuit.
Absolutely, but now Madbird and Brenton Foley are nose to tail, and nose into tail even. Brenton Foley's getting his front bumper shoved up into the back of Madbird a little bit there, trying to give him a little bit of a bump and run. There's almost a lunge into the stadium section. It's a little bit tight. They're going to be side by side by the time they exit here, I'd say, if Brenton Foley isn't already into 5th position.
So Madbird in 5th place, up 1 position from where he started, but that doesn't tell the whole story of Madbird's race. He's been down, up like an absolute yo-yo, and so too Brenton Foley. It's been a race of differing fortunes for him as well.
Absolutely, and it's not something you really want to see in the early stages. He's around. Brenton Foley spun at 360 degrees. He's recovered it fantastically, but he has lost all that ground that he made up on Madbird. So Madbird is now clear and away in 5th position, and Brenton Foley, I don't believe it. He's done it again. He's just spun it right round.
Yeah, like a record baby. Yeah. Spin, 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 as Murray Walker would say. That was a fantastic recovery. Just found a gear and drove off.
Very lucky to be able to recover that one. Thankfully, he was a little bit far away from the walls of that part of the track, but the safety car was almost brought out as a result of that. He could have found himself wound up pointing the wrong way around the track, but the net result of this is he's now down 2 spots from where he started and a considerable margin, in fact 2.6 seconds to Madbird, who is now streaking away and is already on the back of Resist.
Yeah, I was going to say, has Resist made an error in the last lap or so, because that gap has come down by quite a remarkable amount in the last few moments.
Possibly. I wouldn't say it's down to the difference between the cars, because that was far too quick to be able to make that gap up. I think it was a gap of about 2.5 seconds, 3 seconds between Resist and those Capris behind him, as Brenton Foley gets a little bit taily on the run down at the turn 6, as he always does. But I'd say Resist did make a mistake somewhere along the line.
Well, he seems to be just pulling away ever so slightly after making that mistake. Doesn't seem to be able to live with the pace set by Diesemage in the Porsche. So one wonders if the Porsche is in its element here around Brno. Porsche's in positions 1, 2 and 3. Didn't really see what happened to Nether. Didn't have a great start, but hasn't been able to make positions. In fact, he's lost a position to Rody in the Ford Capri. So he's down there in 12th at the moment. At the moment.
I almost wonder if he's made a mistake somewhere as well. He did have some issues with the Caterhams, I remember last year, and although they're very different beasts to the DRM cars, always very wide through that corner, and Till's going to be right on the back of him soon as well. Maybe it's just a case of Nether not being able to get a full grasp on the DRM cars as quickly as he'd like.
Well, I mean, they're hard enough to drive on your own, let alone in a 55-minute race, as Brno again sets the fastest lap of the race. 55.9. That is 2 seconds faster than his previous best. And compared to someone like Xeris, who I don't think it's unfair to say he's the class of the field in that 320. BMW 320 is lapping in the high 59s. 4-second difference in lap time there. Old Tyrrell's stationary by the side of the road.
He's fully rotated it by the looks. I'm not sure what's happened there. I guess he's probably just spun it out of whichever corner he's in at the moment. I can't look at the timing screens and tell. I'd say it looks to be on the run into turn 6 even, but that puts him very far behind the rest of the field.
He kept it out of the wall, which was actually quite a feat. We've got a safety car. I believe that's probably for what happened with Tyrrell, so that neutralizes the field. What happened to Brno? Sam Smith is now in the lead of the race. Just looking for a replay now. Berto's been off the racetrack. So he was lapping some 4 seconds faster than our previous champion, and it was the most innocuous little mistake. Just lost the rear. I think that was where Foley lost the rear on an earlier lap and got bogged in the gravel, and he's let his Black Schuppen Rennen teammate through. So Sam Smith leads the way. Drama in the early stages of this race, just 6 laps in.
Unbelievable. I was about to say that Rody also went off the track on the run up to Horsepower Hill. I think he was at turn number 12 where he went off the track, and I was wondering if that was what brought out the safety car. But yeah, there's action happening all over the place. It's almost like I'm watching a motorbike race. You never know who's going to go off the track next.
Well, it's quite a long lap, so it'll be a little while before they catch up to the safety car. It gives people like Tyrrell a bit of a reprieve, because they'll be able to catch up the fair amount of time that they've lost with spins. Brno, we know, has the pace to pull away, but just that critical error, he had an almost unassailable lead, and he's now given that up, and as a result, the entire field is going to bunch up, which is going to be bad for the 2 pink pigs.
It is going to be bad for the 2 pink pigs, but only if they can't get away well from the line, because as we've seen, those Porsche 935s, especially those pink ones, can really get a gap at the front. Diesemage is already 11.7 seconds behind these pair.
They've caught the safety car, Chevrolet safety car in effect, and the first time we've seen a safety car in Apex rear wing for over a season, and it's going to make quite a difference to this race. The pit lane will be closed. No one allowed to pit until the cars have bunched up behind the safety car, and then it will open for anyone who decides to. But whether or not that will be required, I don't know. We're only about 13 minutes into the race.
Looks like Sam Smith just pulled over on the track and let Brno through. I wonder what that's about.
Well, that would be very strange. It seems well, the game would penalise you if it thought that you were out of order. So maybe the game was telling him to let Brno through. I wonder if Tyrrell was the one who triggered the safety car and it froze the order as it was then. And because Brno was leading at that point, it's decided to let Brno back through. If that's the case, then Brno has been the beneficiary of an extraordinary piece of good luck.
Brno would be a very, very lucky boy in that instance. But if you have a look on the left-hand side of his car when the lighting is beneficiary, or when the lighting is beneficial is probably the right word, he's got a sizable dent in the side of his car there. I don't know if that translates to any mechanical damage, but if it does, then that's going to be very unfortunate for his race hopes.
And Sam Smith would know that Brno is not unprone, so to speak, to making the odd error, having seen that he's already made one while leading fairly comfortably. So let's
Looks
take...
like Never's hit the fence under the safety car.
Who's that?
Never.
Oh no. So he must have some damage causing that. We know that he lost positions earlier on, so maybe the car just wasn't handling... Yeah, that thing just didn't want to turn at all. So that's very, very bad news for him. He will get an opportunity to make pit stop if he needs to. The front left is locked up. The front left is
very hard for him to get out of the pit, to get out of the gravel. It is tough enough on its own. You have to really ride the clutch and stamp on the accelerator to get out of there. But he's stuck and he's back in the pit lane.
Rhodey's stuck there at the same part of the racetrack as well, and so too Tyrrell. What is going on here?
It almost makes you wonder if there's any fluids down on the track.
Well, now that becomes the first retirement of this championship, and pit stops. Pit stops occurring for the two Pink Pigs, and also Brenton Foley and Madbird. Huge action in the pits.
Here we go. Pit stop in ARW is not something I've ever seen, given I only started commentating during the Caterhams, which are only 10 or 12-minute races. So we never saw anything in the kind. So this is where things are going to start getting interesting. Decimage currently leads on track at the moment due to his strategy of not wanting to pit just yet. We'll have to see how long he can hold that gap out the front for once the safety car clears away, but the field is still neutralized under the safety car. So it's Decimage first on track at the moment, ahead of Resist and Goofball, ahead of Zerus, in fourth position, who is currently the fourth and final car in the queue. Everybody else is either pitted or hit the fence and retired.
This is going to cause a big reshuffling of the order, so let's have a look at that. After the guys who haven't pitted, we can see them there in Decimage, Resist, Goofball Antics and Zerus. Madbird has won the race off pit lane. Brenton Foley has got himself a drive-through penalty. We wondered whether that would happen to someone, and Brenton Foley has become the first beneficiary of a penalty in this race. So Berto, Roadhog, Sam Smith and Brenton Foley are the cars that made pit stops. And I believe Pablo too, if I'm not mistaken, who's also catching up to the train.
I'd say Tyrrell's probably due for a pit stop as well. If you look at his car, he's missing his front splitter entirely. There's nothing below those headlights.
They won't be
and that left front quarter panel is also gone as well, so he's going to be lacking quite a bit of front downforce.
Now, the unfortunate thing from Brenton Foley's point of view is that he's got that drive-through penalty hanging over his head, and he won't be able to serve that, of course, during the safety car period. So he'll have to wait until the safety car comes back in, serve it under green, in which case he'll lose an awful lot of time.
That's going to be quite far down the order. I'd say he's going to be behind the entirety of the running pack, at least to start with. Whether or not he's able to charge up back to the field and overtake all those cars that he lost time to, courtesy of that penalty, whether he's able to do that without making errors, we'll have to see.
Well, this is a very, very intriguing race in prospect now. It was, I think, earlier than we were expecting to see the cars come and make their pit stops. But they may well be able to go to the end now, a lot of these guys. And the fact that Madbird has been able to jump the two Pink Pigs in the pit stops would certainly be something that I believe would be a result of the fact that that Ford Capri doesn't use as much fuel. We're going green once more, and Decimage is going to lead them away. Look at the two BMW 320s going
Look at Resist
side by
in first
side.
position. Resist has absolutely jumped the Porsche off the line, and Resist gets the whole shot off the safety car into turn one.
Great job from him. So Diesemaj, was he sleeping on the line? Was that BMW? But W just spooled up nicely. Got Diesemaj losing the position to Xeris, who's had an absolutely mega start. Fourth on the restart, and now he's moving his way up into second. And he may well not be able to. He may well be able to get away without a pit stop. It effectively has been a free pit stop for all these guys behind him, so he's going to be hunted down. This race has been absolutely turned on its head, but remember that we believe that Resist and Diesemaj will have to make pit stops to get to the end without further assistance from the safety car. The guys behind, led by Roadhog, who's actually made his way up past a few cars by the looks of it. He's gone past Goofball Antics and Madbird, who's dropped back through the field as well. These guys are looking good as well.
Look at Xeris through this stadium section, one of the tightest parts of the circuit. He's absolutely racy. It looks like he's about to pip Resist as they come out of that section on the run down to turn 11. That BMW 320 is absolutely rapid.
It absolutely is. And remember, he's on old tyres as well. The other guys might have changed tyres. Xeris, as he locks up his front right tyre, is putting his brother Resist under an enormous amount of pressure right now for the lead of this race. And this was the lucky break that he wanted. Try and get a bit of clear track and streak free while everyone else is trying to make their way through.
Battles between these two have always been thrilling. We saw some great action between Resist and Xeris at Place City Circuit, which is one of the other tracks that Roadhog devised for last season's competition.
Oh, he's
Xeris
off!
runs very wide.
He's off!
He's
out of the race!
fence.
Wheel goes over the barrier there, and what on earth happened there? Because Xeris, the champion, is getting 0 points today. Oh my goodness.
That wasn't just the commentator's curse, that was the commentator's smite. I absolutely destroyed Xeris there, and I'm very apologetic, but that's Xeris gone. 3 wheels on his wagon.
Wow, there's no way he's getting back into this race. They can't reattach a wheel. So Xeris, the pictures that you're seeing are correct, ladies and gentlemen, is trying to trundle back to the pits on 3 wheels. He will not be getting that one fixed, and he will not be winning this race. He becomes the second retirement in this DRM championship.
What a shame for Xeris. I was really looking forward to seeing how he was going to go toe-to-toe with some of those Porsches. It was great seeing him off the restart on the run down to turn 4, I think it was, chopping and changing position with the Porsches, even on the run to the straight as they accelerated at different rates, broke at different rates, and cornered in at different rates. It was fantastic to see, but it's a shame that race has ended so early now.
We now have a battle between Resist and Diesemaj for the lead of the race, but remember, those two have not made pit stops, so unless they've been able to save enough fuel under the safety car in order to get away without stopping, they will take the punishment of a tour of the pit lane in a few short moments. But
Berto's up to 3rd position already, and Sam Smith just got 4th around the outside at turn 10 of Roadhog and the Celica. So those pink pigs are really charging up the field again.
Yeah, showing the pace that put them in 1 and 2 at the very start of the race. And Berto is now looking back in position for a win, having made his pit stop. So good job from the two Black Schuppen and Rennen cars. They very much have got their strategy sorted out.
I'm just trying to think, what happened to Xeris there? Did he just miss his brake marker on the run up the hill?
Yeah, I can't put any blame on Resist there. It didn't look like he moved his line or anything. Looks like Xeris just completely forgot where he braked for that corner.
Yeah, maybe he was not used to how the car was handling after he got back on the race conditions, but it's very tight at the front now. It looks like, Diesemaj is having a look. That's very narrow. They're side by side now. I think he's going to get through as they go through the second turn, the second apex of that first bend. I think it's a bit of a double apex bend that first one, because it's written down as 2 turns where I'm looking, and the third turn is, of course, that left-hand kink. But look at this lead group. Diesemaj is about to get swamped again by Resist, but it is side by side still.
Big moment into the corner there from Diesemaj, and Berto doesn't want to get caught up too much but behind these guys, knowing that he's on a different strategy, but he is being backed up into his teammate Sam Smith right now.
You say he doesn't want to get caught up, but he's right on the tail of that BMW M1. I think he very much wants to get caught up, but if he's a smart driver, I think he'll keep his distance, because these guys could very well put themselves into the gravel at this rate.
He can't afford to, though. His teammate is coming up at a rapid rate of knots. There he is, Sam Smith. The gap is visual now. I think he doesn't want to get caught up, but he wants to be clear. And so at the moment, that isn't happening. Oh, is that a move there from Sam Smith, who's right on the back
wing of Brno now, who has a bit of a moment, and Sam Smith is going to sneak down the inside and take what will be the effective race lead if he can hold it down to the next corner. And battles going on between the two teammates. Sam Smith slots in behind like the gentleman he is, and Brno retains the lead in that inter-team battle.
Great stuff between Brno and Sam Smith. And even without the pit stops, these guys are probably going to charge ahead of these of Decimage and Resist at the front of the field. So it really shows on what level these guys are compared to the rest of the field.
It does indeed. It's ominous signs for the rest of this championship if they can fight their way back into it so easily. And Resist now locking up exactly where his brother did. The exact same accident that Zera's had a lap and two, oh, no, it was 2 laps ago. What?
I don't believe it. It was the exact same thing. He missed his brake marker and he speared straight off. He's still got 4 wheels on, but that gravel is incredibly thick. It's a yellow flag at the moment, no safety car, and he's back underway, so everything's all clear. He has a little bit of damage on his front right quarter panel, but nothing too substantial. But oh my goodness, he's back down to 7th now, and he's straight in the pit lane.
Yeah, well, he had to make a pit stop anyway, so probably a good idea to try and repair any damage. If there is another safety car late in the race, it will play into his hands. As we see Brenton Foley going through to reclaim 7th place after serving his penalty. Oh my goodness gracious me, what an absolute turn of events. Decimage now leads the way from Brno. Got to wonder with that corner if the track is gripped up a lot on the inside but not at all on the outside, because that's the only thing I can think of that could potentially cause 2 drivers in almost subsequent laps to make the exact same error seemingly.
I think you might be right, Stairs. It's a very, very, very wide piece of tarmac, so there's a lot of varied lines you could take there, and I'd say the rubber's going to only be in one certain part of that track.
Well, Decimage is probably not going to be wanting to look in his mirrors right now, because he's getting an absolute assault of Pink Pig. 3 Porsches leading the way. Goofball Antics quietly in 4th place in the BMW 320i as the 2 Porsches argue over which one is going to have an attack on Decimage's Mr. Sparkle Racing 935 Turbo.
He's effectively not in this lead battle, but he's on the same lead lap. He is still tracking in 1st position, but due to the pit strategy, he's just trying to... He's not mixing it up with these 2 pink ones at the moment, but if he looks in his mirror, like you said, nothing but pink, and he's trying to make that Porsche as wide as he can because he wants to back those guys into the rest of the field, because that's going to have benefits for him later on in the race if he can do that.
Well, unlike the last few laps, we've gone through turns 14 and 15 without losing a car, and so this battle group remains a group of 3. What sort of lap times are they doing at the moment? 1 minute 58.9 from Decimage, 58.4 from Brno, and Sam Smith something very, very similar indeed. They're pulling away from the guys behind them. Goofball Antics and Madbird the last time out, both in the 59s.
It looks like we've had Rhodey retire from the race as well, which is very unfortunate for him. So we now have only 10 runners left in this motor race. With Resist, who was just leading the race before, unfortunately due to that accident, he's all the way down in 10th with a margin of 20 seconds to Tyrrell in front. So he's got a lot of work to do.
A lot of points on offer now because points go down to 15th place. So Resist, if he can keep it on the track, would still get 6 points if he finished where it was right now. So they may well prove valuable points in the future of this championship.
That's what's crucial. Points pay all the way down to 15th position, but you have to finish the race. So that might be a little bit of a change of strategy tack for these guys in future. Just trying to keep the car on the black stuff for the entirety of the race and just bringing it home safe and sound.
Sam Smith, is he going to have a lunge on Brno right now? Because he knows that Berto's fast, and this might be the opportunity to put a car between himself and his teammate as they both slide around there, losing car lengths to Decimage. And Sam Smith, if he can get past into the lead, past Brno and past Decimage, who gets a little bit of a nudge there from Brno, could be the best opportunity for Sam to win this race.
Bit of a wobble there from Sam Smith, and it looked like Brno was running very wide into turn 11 there, but I think he just took a very late apex to get that run into the 12-13Ss, and he's right side by side with Decimage, who runs very wide. He's not going to hit the fence too, is he? No, he powers out of the gravel trap, but he's lost those 2 positions to the Pink Pigs. That could have been disastrous. We've already seen so far this race what can happen. He's peeling straight into the pits after that, and I don't blame him for that.
Guess what? It was the same corner. Turn 14 strikes again.
Turn 14. I don't think I ever successfully navigated that in the 15 minutes of practice that I took earlier today.
Did you get to that part of the track?
Oh, every now and then I did, but when I did, I don't think I went much further than that. What I did do is I went straight into that wall at a very rapid amount of knots because it's an absolutely blind crest. Not to mention the amount of grip that doesn't seem to be there because we've had a lot of guys just jumping on the brakes and nothing's happening. They're spearing straight off.
Well, tyres are certainly getting a little bit older now. We're approaching the halfway distance of this race. We've gone through, actually probably more than halfway now. It's a 55-minute race, and we have 25 minutes left, which means 30 minutes have elapsed. And Diesemaj gets a drive-through penalty, which, I'll be honest, doesn't actually surprise me very much. No pit lane speed limiter on this car, as we've got a bit of a moment there for Brno and Sam Smith challenging for the lead of the race. He'll have the inside to the next corner, so Sam Smith makes his move with 25 minutes remaining and gets through into the lead. Great job, Sam Smith.
Fantastic job, Sam Smith. They're going to have some lap traffic pretty soon. Tyrrell just made another error in the stadium section for his last lap around, for his 13th lap. Brought a brief yellow flag at that point of the track, and he's got a little bit more damage now. He's missing the bonnet off that car even. So at this rate, I'd say Sam Smith and Brno are going to be catching up to that green Mobil 1 Ford Capri pretty rapidly as he charges up Horsepower Hill as these guys around turns 12 and 13. So that could be a little bit interesting as well to see where these guys dice around when they try to get past that car.
Pink Pig 1-2 rages on. Let's take a stock take of this race. We've got Goofball Antics in the BMW 320 who's quietly made his way up into third place, and he's so good at getting these podiums in underpowered cars. Every now and then takes a win, and he seems to be doing that again tonight. But anyone who wants a podium more than Madbird, I don't think I can think of one. He is going to try his very best to wrestle that podium position away from Goofball Antics, and a podium on merit. He'd be very, very pleased with that for a season opener in these DRM cars. Roadhog is doing a great job up there in 5th place in that Celica. He is about 5 seconds ahead of Brenton Foley, who's recovering from that drive-through penalty, and he's lapping fairly quickly at the moment. 57.3 the last time around. That was his personal best lap. Diesemaj is fighting with Pablo at the moment after making his pit stop, and Pablo is clear of resist by some 45 seconds, so that damage...
Sorry to interrupt you there, but Diesemaj is coming into the pits again. Of course, he's got to serve his drive-through penalty, so that's going to drop him right to the back of the field.
And that's going to take him out of that battle that he was in at the time. So very, very slow all the way down this pit lane. It's going to feel like an absolute eternity, and he'll have to manually monitor the speed as he goes through. Wonder if he practiced that. Don't know if he did. Cuts back onto the racetrack and no more penalties, so he's effectively served that penalty without breaking the speed limit again.
As you were going through the field earlier, I was watching all the guys go through turn 14, and I think they're all trying to take it very easy through there now. They know that a lot of these guys are going off at 14, so they're just being as cautious as they possibly can, I'd say.
I'm a little bit worried about Sam Smith's rear tyres, given the way that he just went through turn 13. Brno was a lot kinder to them than Sam, even though Sam seems to have the pace at the moment.
He certainly does. He's got a margin of about 0.7 of a second, but that's going to be coming down, I'd say, a little bit in the few coming laps, with Brno being able to conserve that rubber a little bit more than Sam Smith would like to.
It's going to be very, very interesting to see which one of these two Pink Pigs takes the victory, if indeed it is one of them. It would be an incredible surprise if it isn't, but they've been the class of the field all night, fastest in practice and the fastest two in qualifying. Brno's really closed up to the back of Sam Smith in the last few moments. They dominated the early part of this race prior to the safety car. Brno with a big, big mistake just before the safety car came out, and very, very luckily the order was shuffled back in Brno's favour. But Sam Smith, as after they were battling with Diesemaj, was able to make the move for the victory. But can he hold on to it for the remaining 22 minutes of this race?
I'm still not sure how much Sam Smith likes to lead, as he gets quite wobbly on the entrance of the stadium section. It may possibly be beneficial for him to drop back and let Brno take the lead so Sam Smith can sit behind and follow his lead. But at the same time, Brno would probably just streak away and pull out a massive gap. So Sam Smith is probably doing the wisest thing at the moment and sitting at the front and staying there for as long as he possibly can.
Yeah, Sam Smith likes his carrots, and I don't mean vegetables. I mean having a car in front of you to judge braking points by. He's very, very good at holding on to the car in front, and it's very, very frustrating if you are the car in front. Once he does get in front, I think he almost likes having a car in his mirrors. It keeps him concentrated, and that seems to be what's happening right now.
I think so, yeah, and he's very good at putting pressure on, as we saw last year in the Caterham series. Not as much as Brenton Foley liked to do. Brenton Foley was a master at doing that, but he's currently down in 6th position, a little bit off the pace of Roadhog by a margin of 2.5 seconds, but I'd say he's catching him pretty rapidly.
Yeah, looking at the lap times, he's taken 4/10 out of Roadhog in the previous lap. Speaking of taking time out of the car in front, Madbird took 2/10 out of Goofball Antics on the previous lap. Let's see what he does on this lap. He's done a 59.1, and so too Goofball Antics. So that gap remains the same on this lap, but Goofball's going to have his work cut out to keep that position. There's still 20 minutes remaining, and a lot can happen in that short amount of time.
Meanwhile, back at the front, Brno looks to have had a couple of opportunities to get past Sam Smith, but he hasn't taken them. Whether that's just a matter of not being able to get the power to get next to him on the run up the straight, or whether he's just sitting back and trying to bide his time to wait to see where the best part could be. He's having another look into turn 6 at the moment. He won't be able to get much done in the stadium section, which is quick rights and lefts, unless a mistake is made from Sam Smith. He's been very wobbly through this part between turn 7 and 8, but he's held it on at the moment. So I'd say watch out for turn 11 especially, is where Berto will try and make a move or have another big look of any place on this lap.
Yeah, like his shootout lap, Sam Smith uses the curb a lot more than Berto seems to, and he's rotating the car on the using it oversteer a little bit more than Berto is. Berto seems to have a nice balance in that car right now, and as we say, potentially saving the tyres for a last minute lunge. Staying with him. Is he just biding his time? Is he just toying with Sam Smith right now?
I'd say it could very well be, but Sam Smith is still a very rapid driver, and the fact that Berto's able to stick onto the back of him and still be able to conserve the tyres the way he is phenomenal. I think it's going to pay dividends in the later stages of this race. As he has a lunge, he's currently taken the lead. Will he make it stick through turns 13 and 14? Yes, he will.
Sam Smith tries the switchback, trying to drive around the outside of 15, but that was a very, very clean move from Berto. Sam Smith seems to have a better run coming down the straight, though. Gets a bit of overlap as they come across the line. Is he going to lunge for the inside or tuck back in behind Berto? He tucks back in behind Berto as Berto goes a little bit wide. Sam Smith with another look, a little bit of a wiggle as they go through towards turn 3, but he lifts out of the throttle, and a lot of car lengths surrendered by Sam Smith just then.
He lifted off the throttle a lot more than he had to there. I almost thought he was going to slot right in behind Berto and get a tow up the hill towards turn 4, but that didn't happen at all. I think he just went, he calmed down a little bit too much there, so now he's got to make that gap back up again. But I think this is Sam Smith in his element now.
Yeah, we will see if he has the pace to match Berto in the final stanza of this race. It is going to be very, very interesting to see which one of these two Tin Shed Racing or Blake Schuppen Rennen cars comes out on top. Oh, big moment there for Berto, allowing Sam Smith up the inside, giving me more to scream about as my voice starts to struggle just a little bit. Sam Smith is going to slot back in behind. We've got other battles developing. Goofball Antics is ever so slightly, just ever so slowly, falling back into the clutches of Madbird, who can sense a podium right now. Brenton Foley isn't too... Oh, he's got up ahead of Roadhog. When did that happen?
By quite some margin, and Roadhog's around. He's rotated it into the stadium section, and he's in the gravel. That's a local yellow flag. Almost a yokel yellow flag. I almost messed my words up there. He's stuck in the gravel at the moment. Will there be a safety car? I would hope not. No, the yellow flag is away. Roadhog's out of the pit, but he's down in 6th position, and he's lost a lot of ground.
Strange incident there from Roadhog. He gets back onto the track without losing any further position.
Sorry to interrupt, but Tyrrell's around into the fence. He's not moving. He's stopped on the side of the track, and that may be a safety car.
It's a local yellow at the moment. Can he get it going? Trying to find a gear by the looks of it. And I think he's just waiting for that car to go past so that he could rejoin the track safely. I think he needs to go in and repair that damage to make that car somewhat drivable. He's not in danger of of finishing too far behind the leader that he won't be classified, but he still needs to be running at the end of the race.
His spare parts department probably hates him today.
Yeah,
He's lost quite a few panels going around the circuit so far, and I think he's just shed his quarter panel again, or I'm not sure if he ever got it back, to be honest. He got his splitter back in the last pit stop, which may help him with a little bit of downforce. But he's gone back into the pits again. No, he hasn't. He's very slow out of that last corner, though.
Sam Smith with a move down the inside, trying to distract Brno. Doesn't make the overtake, but 2/10 the difference. You can see it on track. That's the closest there is in this race. And it is for the lead, so aren't we lucky?
We certainly are. It's an incredible race. We all, given qualifying, we thought, oh, that's a big wobble from Sam Smith. Given qualifying, we thought Brno was going to be streaking away and just completely out of touch with the rest of the field, but that safety car really shook things up. Sam Smith just got a sniff at the back end of Brno there on his right rear tyre coming out of turn 10. They're running down to 11 now. Sam Smith's going to stay behind, going to bide his time for a little bit, maybe try for a lunge up Horsepower Hill or even on the run into 12 and 13. Oh, that's a big slide from Sam Smith. He's keeping it together, but his tyres aren't. I'd say it's going to be very tricky for him to keep going with these rubber that he's got on his car at the moment. He may have to pit again at the end of this race. I suppose they both have to pit, but Sam may have to pit sooner rather than later.
You can never count Sam Smith, though, out. I think of my sim racing days, the best battles I ever had were, well, some of them were with Sam Smith, who's gone off at the very same corner that everyone else went off, turn 14, and Sam Smith has thrown it all away. 3.5 seconds the difference now, and that is most likely game, set, and match in favour of Brno with 15 minutes remaining, unless Sam Smith has got an incredible turn of pace to catch that gap back up.
At this point, it's not just a tricky corner, it's a rite of passage, it seems. All of these guys are getting off the track at least once in this race, and it looks like Sam Smith just had his turn there, but now he's down 4 seconds, and that's unbelievable. It's going to probably take another safety car for him to catch onto the back of Brno.
Yeah, Brno's looking very good for his second victory in Apex Rear Wing and his first as an individual driver. As I said earlier in the broadcast, his only other victory came teaming up with Sam Smith for Tinshed Racing's entry into the Apex Rear Wing 6 hours of Spa in May last year. And a fantastic victory that was for them. Now the closest battle on the racetrack is between Goofball Antics and Madbird for the final spot on the podium. And the difference between them the last time around was very, very small, just 0.02 of a second, with Madbird just ever so slightly inching that gap down bit by bit.
They're very evenly matched cars in terms of performance. They've got a power to weight ratio somewhere in the 0.6 horsepowers per kilogram. The Capri weighs in at 850 kilos with 581 brake horsepower, while the BMW 320 has a little bit less power, but a little bit more weight. So on paper, that the car in third position, Goofball Antics, shouldn't be performing as well as it is, but he's doing a fantastic job, isn't he?
He has a knack for getting these underpowered cars into positions that they don't belong. The Group A season that we had about a year and a half ago in Apex Rear Wing, he drove an underpowered Alfa Romeo, and that thing did not deserve any sorts of results. But if I'm not mistaken, I reckon he actually got a victory in that car. And that just goes to show the sort of driver that he is. He often likes the challenge of an underpowered car, even if it means that he's not going to be challenging for wins every Wednesday. But every now and then he pulls a result out that's truly remarkable.
So it's still very close as they run into the main straight now. Madbird is just out of range, I'd say, for a draft on the run to that straight. It's a relatively short main straight, though, so there's not a huge amount you can do along there, is there?
No, not really. 0.3 of a second he took out of Goofball Antics on the previous lap, though. That is visibly coming down. 13 minutes left in the race, though. Does he have enough time?
I'd say he does, provided there's no mistakes made on the behalf of Madbird. If he can catch up to the back of Goofball Antics, I'd say it'd be relatively easy, relatively speaking, for him to get past. We'll have to wait and see, of course. Anything can happen in this race, as we've seen. There's every chance that either one of those two might spear off at the turn 14. Who knows? Brenton Foley, I'm just watching him now, is having a big slide, but that shouldn't be anything to write home about. Brenton Foley has big slides for breakfast, doesn't he?
He does, and you don't write home about breakfast, so I think he'll be writing about other things. Brenton Foley, probably about the drive-through penalty that he had. He might be writing to Decimage, comparing notes on their respective drive-through penalties in this race.
So Sam Smith, Brno now in first position. I keep getting the two confused because they're both trading places every so often when they're not off the track. We've got a yellow flag somewhere. I'd say Tyrrell's rotated again.
In front of the leader, actually, and into the wall at the exit of turn 12, between 12 and 13. And you can just hear that.
He's stuck at that corner quite a bit, and he's reversed straight into the wall on the other side.
Well, we won't do him the indignity of showing that footage. So we'll move on. Looks like there he is on the other side of the track as Madbird goes through and continues his chase of goofball antics. Good chase, that. Good chase. I don't know who to back. I'm a neutral commentator, so I don't necessarily want to barrack for one over the other, but both of these two deserve this podium, given the way they've driven tonight.
Brilliant stuff for both of them. They're both doing a great job of keeping it together. 1 minute 59.7 for Madbird. Not his best lap time so far, but still pretty quick.
Yeah, and only marginally slower than Goofball Antics, about half a tenth of a second. The only blot on his copybook for me tonight was the start, where he nosed into Xeris. But we'll have to go back and have a look at that incident, maybe analyse it prior to the race next week to see whether or not that's something that he gets a penalty for, but I don't see that he had too many options. I only saw a replay of it the once, and it appears as though the car in front of him had nowhere to go, so where do you turn? You turn right or left, and it was just unfortunate. I think Xeris went the same way.
I think so too. And looking at Madbird's car at the moment, he doesn't really have any damage on at the moment, and he does have some manga on the sides of his car, so literally speaking, there are no blots on his comic book.
Very good. I didn't think of that. Although I'm sure any fans of manga would probably be offended by it being referred to as a comic book.
They're probably on the way to my house right now to wring my throat.
There you go. Well, Japanese culture aside, Berto leads the race by 4 seconds now, just inching away from Sam Smith by tenths at a time. And it looks like Sam Smith's bid for victory has come to an end as he goes into that treacherous turn 14, the one that's claimed so many during this race. And that is an ARW hotspot. I wonder if that's a theme that will continue throughout this championship of corners catching out numerous people. I can see that being a thing in these cars.
Absolutely. I remember racing this track in the MotoGP game a couple of years ago, and I remember turn 14 being a little bit treacherous, but nowhere near as treacherous as seeming in this version of the track, because it's absolutely blind. And if you're charging it at full pelt, you have no idea where your braking marker is, and especially if you've got an issue or the track's a little bit slippery than you expect, you're pretty much you've got no hope of making it through there alive. Berto's currently coming down to turn 6 now. He's seeing Resist in his sights at the moment, who is currently sitting in 9th and posing as the lap traffic as Tyrrell now sits in the pit lane.
Retired.
As a DNF, he's finished the race. He's done, so there are 9 runners on track at the moment.
A lot of points going begging there. All of those guys who you see with DNF next to their name could have collected a lot of points if they were able to continue, but it doesn't appear as though they were able to. Just too much damage. And of course, you still have to be able to lap within a reasonable time of the leader. So Resist, if he can keep it on the track, he'll be last, but 9th place for him will net him a decent number of points. And certainly if he's fighting any of those guys who didn't get points tonight, that'll put him in a good position in respect to them. Gap between Goofball Antics and Madbird last lap didn't come down much at all, but I think on this lap, Madbird's making good progress. Goofball Antics is really concentrating hard right now. 0.6 of a second, the margin between the two.
Great stuff between these two. It's been some really smooth and flawless driving for both of them to stay where they are at the moment. Hopefully they can keep it up and provide a very entertaining battle as we get towards the closing stages of this race. There is only about 10 minutes to go, maybe a little bit less as we factor in that final lap that will come after the clock has reached 0. But let's see what these guys can do, whether Madbird can get up into 3rd position or whether Goofball can hold him off in some inferior machinery.
Just enjoying the noise of those DRMs as we enter the last 10 minutes of the race. You can hear them. They all sound a bit different. And as they get on the throttle, it just sounds fantastic.
Absolutely. I'm just having a listen to Roadhog now as he comes out of turn 10 on the run down to turn 11. Wishing more people took up the option of the Celica because I think it's by far my favourite sounding car on the grid.
Yeah, let's go on board with Roadhog for a little bit of time just to hear that Celica purr.
And you can just hear that turbo working in every aspect, how massive it is. You can just tell by how long it takes to spool up and the massive flutter you get off the back as it cycles back out without the wastegate. He's crossing the line now, made it through turn 14 quite well. In 6th position, he's got a gap of about 40 seconds to Foley in front though, so I'm not sure he's going to be able to make up much ground before this race is out.
And that's looking like a fairly comfortable 6th position for Roadhog. I don't anticipate Foley being a possibility for him to catch. I'm wondering if Sam Smith has had a moment. He's dropped to 7 seconds behind Brno. Maybe he's just going to bring it home now. Not putting...
Sorry, speaking of moments, hate to interrupt, but Decimage has got 3 wheels on his wagon at turn 14, our old friend.
Oh, no. Yeah, front right. I don't think he knew it was gone. He was taking the final corner as though... as though nothing was wrong. Now he's noticed. Once he's put a bit of weight on that car. So he's going to lose a position to resist because he's not going to be able to continue with 3 wheels. Let's catch the replay as Decimage becomes a victim for the 2nd time during this race of turn 14. He should have known by that point. He's seen so many other people go off there. Oh my goodness me. Not a place you want to stand if you're a spectator on the outside of turn 14. If you ever see a DRM race there, not that you would. Since they don't really race anymore apart from in historical ways. But Decimage becomes the 5th retirement of this race.
But if you are a DRM fan or if you're in the mood to collect some parts flying off those cars, turn 14 might be the place to go.
Very, very close now between Goofball Antics and Madbird. That gap is academic right now. Madbird has the carrot right in front of him. It's down to basically 0.3 of a second. Sam Smith is dropping away from Brno. But he's pretty comfortably ahead of these two in 2nd place. This is where it's at. Can Goofball Antics hold on for a podium, or can Madbird get his first podium in a few seasons in Apex Rear Wing? Wasn't able to do so in the Caterhams, but well, his rival in the Caterhams against the recently retired Decimage was a very interesting battle that came down to a countback last time. His 4th or 3rd place potentially tonight could be a great start in his bid to beat his rival Decimage in the DRM cars.
This is the kind of battle you don't get to see very often because they're 2 very different cars, but when you do get to see a battle like this, it's a real thing of beauty. You get to see straight up close and personal right next to each other in direct comparison. The 2 very different driving styles needed to get all the speed out of these cars, especially when one's on the defense in 3rd position and the other in 4th is on the attack.
It's been a scrappy lap from Madbird. As we caught him, he was right on the rear wing of Goofball Antics, but he just had a few messy corners. Goofball Antics was able to stretch away and get a bit of breathing space with 3.5 minutes remaining on the clock. And look at Brenton Foley. He's only 3 seconds behind them. He's been banging out the lap times very, very quickly indeed. We'd written him off for this battle, but he may well factor into it now. 58.1 the last time around, a 1.5 seconds faster than those ahead of him.
You never know. It seems like Madbird's putting a lot of pressure on himself to try and get past Goofball. Almost too much pressure. He's already dropped back to 1.2 seconds behind Goofball after being right on his bumper. So I'd say he's just put himself under a little bit too much pressure to try and get past it. He's made a few errors, and the beneficiary of that, not just Goofball, but like you said, Brenton Foley, is getting pretty close.
Well, he uses his tyres to make that lap time, but boy, oh boy, does he make that lap time. We've seen him make a number of errors as a result of that. Drive-through penalties notwithstanding, but we've seen spins from Brenton Foley as well. And, well, I guess it's live by the sword, die by the sword for PBF Send It.
That's exactly right. Sending it in every single sense of the word. There's a lot of tyre smoke and skid marks, fresh ones on the ground. I think that was either Goofball or Madbird who laid those down. So one or both of those guys is driving very aggressively at the moment. I'm going to hazard a guess and say it's Goofball because the gap is now 2 seconds.
Well, Brno now leads by 10 seconds from Sam Smith. So Sam Smith has effectively flown the white flag and is going to concede the first race win of this DRM championship to his Blechschuppen-Rennen teammate. But I'm sure he'll be very, very pleased with a 1-2. Bit of a technical alliance going on there. Lots of practice and setup talk going on between the two. And I think they'll be pretty happy with that start to the championship. Not really a team's championship. We've only got a couple of teams operating as teams. Everyone else prep privateers apart from Blechschuppen-Rennen and the main force racing team, which is going to be run by Pablo and Bang. Of course, Pablo not in this championship. Bang not in this particular race. Pablo running currently in 7th place.
I think Sam Smith will still be very happy to take home 20 points after today's effort. Fantastic race from him to be able to hold on to that second position. Even challenged for the lead at various points after the safety cars. Did very well to hold his own against Brno, who is quite clearly the fastest car at the moment. But Sam Smith drove a very good defensive race in those early stages, and that second place will be well deserved.
Just look at that fastest lap from Brno, a 55.9, which at the time was far and away his fastest lap of the race. 0.6 faster than the fastest lap achieved by Sam Smith, which is a 56.6. And no one else was even anywhere near close. Maybe Brenton Foley with a 57, which is a remarkable lap time for that Ford Capri. But that just sort of goes to show that the advantage those guys have around this circuit right now. And, next round in Belle Isle, which is a very, very different circuit, what sort of advantage will they have, if one at all?
Absolutely, and Belle Isle could be very unpredictable in the sense that it is a street circuit, and with these guys spinning off the track, or not necessarily spinning off, but getting loose and wobbly very often, they could find themselves in the fence more often than they'd want to admit.
Looks like the wind's gone out of Madbird's sails just a moment ago, and also Brenton Foley, who's made a mistake somewhere in the last lap or so, now 9 seconds behind Madbird, so not looking like he'll be able to charge back onto the podium. The timer has hit 0, and Brno's coming up to the line, so this should be the final lap of the race for Brno, lap 28 out of 28, and he leads by 12 seconds right now from Sam Smith, who's coming up to lap resist for what should be the first time, as he's gone a lap down to Brno not too long ago. The gap... Oh, sorry, I was looking at the wrong thing. The gap now between Goofball Antics and Madbird out to 1.7 seconds. And looks like that's safely in the pocket of Goofball Antics if he doesn't make a mistake on this final lap of the race.
Resist gets out of the way of Sam Smith. It's not a battle for Resist to be fighting at the moment, so Sam Smith is now clear of lap traffic. He's not going to be able to make up that position at all with a gap of 13.9 seconds to Brno in first position. But he'll be trying to keep it on the track and out of the rear end of another car if he can. But keep your eyes on turn 14, one of the penultimate corner of the lap. If anyone goes off on this final lap, boy, that'd be a story, wouldn't it?
It certainly would. It certainly would indeed. The leader is now coming up behind Pablo, potentially putting him a lap down before winning the race. Looks like all of the battles have been settled now, and I think a great job that some of those battles still hadn't been settled up towards the penultimate lap of the race. The closest two drivers on the racetrack now, Goofball Antics and Madbird, with just 2 seconds separating them, but Goofball Antics has driven a superb race. But we can take nothing away from this man, Brno, number 13, Blechschuppen-Rennen, and he got a few podiums in the Caterham Series in Season 7. In Season 8, it looks like he's starting as he means to go on. And could this be a championship drive for Brno, who has convincingly beat his teammate? He comes up to the treacherous turn 14, negotiates it well, out of the final corner, and he's going to come across the line in a few moments' time to become the first winner in Apex Rear Wing Season 8.
Great win from Brno there. He takes home the inaugural bag of 25 points in this championship. Sam Smith makes his way around the final corner now, and he will cross the line to take that second position. Well deserved from both of the Pink Pig races.
Flashes the lights. Very happy with that result, it would appear. Gave Brno a good run for his money to get to fighting over that victory, but he'll be very, very happy with a 1-2 for his team, Tin Shed Racing. Check them out on your in your Google searches, there's a lot of good mods that Tin Shed Racing puts up. Goofball Antics comes across the line. Very, very pleased with that third place. The 320, the BMW 320 honks the horn, and a very well-deserved podium from him. Great recovery drive from...
Foley's rotated on the final corner.
Oh, he's got a huge margin in ahead of Roadhog there. Though it's nothing much to be worried about from Brenton Foley's point of view. Just a little bit of a heart attack for his fans. And it was turn 4. It wasn't turn 14. It was turn 15, which gets a little bit of airtime now. So I think he was just giving a bit of a show for the fans. He knew he'd get a bit of broadcast time with the cars so spread out on the final lap of the race. So congratulations to Brenton Foley on his 5th place. Certainly gave us a show. Roadhog is still coming up to the final sequence of corners now to finish 16th place for the Nibbles Raya Hadas team. And he'll be, I don't know if satisfied is the right word, but he's brought it home after what has been an eventful race, and that Celica is not the most powerful car in terms of a horsepower or power to weight ratio point of view. Best lap 2 minute 0.6, and handy points for him. Last guy on the lead lap with Pablo and Resist in 7th and 8th, and it looks like Sam Smith only just fueled enough for the race, getting a push home from the Interceptor.
Absolutely. Talk about fuel strategy. Looks like Sam Smith ran it down to the very last shred of the very last mill of petrol, and he's getting a push home from Pablo as they make their way down towards turn 11. So they've got a long way to go. Let's see if that Capri can get that Porsche up Horsepower Hill. Yeah,
may well be a little bit of a struggle. Matty, we've got our drivers coming into the TV chat now for a bit of a chat. We've got Berto, our race winner. We've got Sam Smith. We don't have Sam Smith yet. He's our 2nd place man. And we've got Goofball Antics, our 3rd place man. So, do you want to have a chat with our winner, Matty?
Well, Berto, congratulations. Great to see you back on top of the winner's step of the podium. Although I feel like I have to congratulate you just as much on not crashing at turn 14. I'm not sure if you saw many of the guys go off there, but it must have been a treacherous corner. How did it treat you?
Pretty well, thank you. First off, it seemed to be. I don't know. Is that where everyone was out braking themselves?
Yes.
Yeah.
Penultimate corner.
Yeah. Yeah. It just kind of. I'd go for a move down the inside there, and everyone seemed to go off. So I'm like, I don't know what's going on, but just sort of take it careful over that bump. But yeah, good race. We ended up keeping it pretty careful and pretty subdued, so happy with that.
But we can't forget, of course, your incredible performance, that corner withstanding. There were some great battles there with Sam Smith, though. It looked like towards the end of the race, there's a bit of a discrepancy in pace between the two of you. But when he was in front, he was driving a very defensive race. How tough was it to get past him?
It would have been hard for the entire race, and he thankfully wound up making a mistake and opened the door, and away we go. Then he was right behind me for a little while, and I think he must have made a mistake. And from there, we were able to put on a bit of a gap. Not sure if he had damage, but...
Yes, my apologies. I keep forgetting because there was that many people who made unfortunate errors throughout the race. I've started to lose track of who's who. Thank you very much, Berto. Congratulations again on the win. Sam Smith, well done. We saw that he had a lot of pace in that race, but unfortunately there was a couple of mistakes there. Tell me how things went for you.
Yeah, it's pretty standard for me, but Berto was far quicker. I was pushing really hard to try and keep up. I really didn't know whether I had enough fuel, and I probably had about half a litre by the time we got to the end of the race, and he has those numbers on his screen, but I didn't have them. So I didn't know whether he was sort of fuel saving. That's why I was sort of able to catch up to him in that second bit. But as soon as he got ahead, I just thought I'll back off a little bit. But even if I was going flat out, I wasn't going to be able to keep up.
How's the tyres? I saw in the later stages of that battle especially, you were getting sideways quite substantially. Was the rubber able to hold on towards the end of the race?
That was the other thing. Like, I changed all 4 tyres. I don't think Berto changed anything. And I was down to pretty much the same percentage of tyre wear that he had. So obviously it was a lot smoother. I had a big lock-up too, which was rattling the half the road.
Very, very well done, regardless, to be able to take on those 20 points in second position. Moving on now to Goofball Antics in the BMW 320, third position. Well done, mate. That's a great race from what has to be said is on paper, not one of the best cars in the field.
Yeah, right, it's not. But in my hands, whew. But no, thank you.
So in the later stages there, you had a great battle with Madbird, I think it was, in 4th position there.
Yeah.
How was it with that pressure that you were getting from that Capri?
There was a bit of pressure there, yes, you're right. Just sort of watching that time come down and doing my best with some really unhappy front tyres, trying not to drive off the track and just keep it together. And I was aware of his tyre wear as well, and he didn't seem too confident in catching me, but I knew all it would take would be one mistake and through he'd go.
Well, you were very smooth and it looked like you were able to keep a lot of wear out of your tyres. But it's hard to say given the differences between Brno and Sam Smith's driving styles and their relatively similar tyre wear. How are yours at the end of the race?
I think my worst was the front left. It was down to 46%, I think. And so, yeah, I probably could have done some better saving of tyres without all those mistakes I made early on. But, how big a difference that would have made, I don't know. But I managed to get it across the line, and that's the main thing.
Congratulations again. Thank you very much to the top 3 podium drivers there. Goofball Antics in 3rd, Sam Smith in 2nd, and Brno, our race winner today. Back to you, Stairs.
Thank you, Matt. Well, that was the opening round of Season 8 of Apex Rear Wing. The DRMs, and boy oh boy, that race had almost everything. A crash before we even got about 50 metres into the race. A safety car, strategies playing out, different types of pit stops going on, penalties, a battle for the lead, a battle for the final spot on the podium, and our champion from the previous round, no points for him at all. Well, what a remarkable way to start our DRM journey. We can't wait for the next round. In 7 days' time, Detroit Belle Isle will be the host as we fly across the pond to Michigan in the United States. We can't wait for that one. Starts 20 past 8 p.m. on the 26th of June. That's Australian Eastern Standard Time. We'll see you then. Thank you, Matty, for joining me.
Anytime.
And we'll see you then. Bye for now.